Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources. Okay, sorry. I know I'm starting this
Nope,
up, but
this is
I'm
perfect.
trying to muster up the strength.
Nope, this is exactly how we should start. With just a laugh.
Hi,
Just
everyone.
that sad, nervous laugh.
I was trying to be as energetic as usual, and then my brain just froze. So, it's been a week. Many of our listeners are not in the United States, but many of you still know that a lot has happened. So, elections happened. This is actually, so we're switching up which episodes we're releasing when, just because the timing was a bit perfect on what we planned to do. So, ironically, we were like, hey, okay, election night, we record on Tuesdays. Like, we'll record if we want to. Let's prep, but we don't have to if we don't want to. And we were like, let's do Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
feels very relevant.
That
So,
that
yeah.
worked out too well.
Yeah. Strong woman in spite of a ton of misogyny, having to find a way to continue to fight and be a superhero despite seeing all the not so pleasant things about humanity.
Hell.
Fun times. So, okay. This is a complicated week for me, I think, to record something. Because on the one hand, I often am working with very marginalized groups of people. I'm talking about people who have years of homelessness. I'm talking about people with severe and persistent mental illness where they even have trouble finding providers who can effectively and willingly work with them. Like I do a lot of work where there's you have to recognize that it goes beyond just the therapy work you're doing with someone. There are systemic factors
Mhm.
that affect people and result in them having disability, result in just unfair treatment and all sorts of things. And so social justice type stuff and aiming for equity and equality and all of these different things in a lot of different ways is fundamentally a part of what I do. And on the flip side, I also try and make sure that I'm a space that anyone can come to because I believe that helping everyone toward happiness and quality of life helps society forward
Right.
overall.
Yeah.
So it's hard to talk about these things and express myself in the way that I think is important while also just making sure that I'm able to maintain a space for everyone. I don't know. It's a very complicated thing to be a therapist sometimes. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
really feel like Wonder Woman, I need 75 years off. Can I have a break?
Yeah. Well, not for the next 4 years. Y'all are going to be busy.
Oh, there's so many jokes from therapists are already all over like TikTok, Instagram reels. My friend sent me something and it was just a therapist moving around the room, drinking a bunch of like caffeinated beverages. Like, oh yeah, you need an appointment. Oh, you need an appointment. Yeah, I'll get you in there.
Yep. Y'all are going to be busy. And honestly, we need y'all. I know a lot of people out there like me are very, very upset, very distraught, very sad, very
Yeah.
angry. And it's completely okay to have those emotions. And I think it is a good idea to seek out therapy if it's one of those things
Oh,
where
for
you're
sure.
not able to manage them or where it's taking up too much time in your day or it's just making it hard to function, or even if you just need to talk things out with someone. I think it's one of those times it's like, hey, definitely go on our website, look at some of the things that at some of the links there to
Yep.
get to know where to reach out and just even to know where to start, because yeah, this sucks. I'll be honest. We have never outright said where we stand politically, but I mean, if you've listened to at least two of our episodes, you probably figured it out.
You probably can guess that I would love to live in a Scandinavian country if I could. I just, yeah, it would be great if we all just had certain fundamental things taken care of,
I'd stick
in
out in a
our
Scandinavian country.
opinions.
I'd stick out in a Scandinavian country, but I'd give
You
it a
would.
whirl.
So
I'd
would
give it a
my
go.
husband, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it is a very bad situation. But like you said, yeah, we were going to talk about Wonder Woman because with this season's theme being no capes, one of the interesting things about Wonder Woman is, and we are talking about the movie
Oh
version
yeah.
of Wonder Woman.
Not 1984.
And
We
we're
we
completely
weren't gonna
ignoring
go there.
1984. I think that one well, consent. Anyway,
Yeah.
the first movie is very, very interesting because basically what ends up happening is after she saves the day and helps fight Ares in World War II, she lives amongst humans for the next 70, 80 years, something like that. Um, or well, I guess what if you're comparing it with now to just from then to 1984, it was only around 40 years. But
Oh, yeah.
if
Guess you're
you're
right.
but if you're taking it from then all the way to the Justice League, I mean it's closer to
Yeah, good
70,
job.
80 years. And
Yeah, I
so
forgot. Yeah, I forgot to add that movie in there in my calculation.
that's fair. But she does keep her resilience. She does still come back and help humanity even after she saw the worst of it. She still has hope. And I do think that was a very interesting thing that we just happened to have listed to talk about the week of the election. That was a complete coincidence, and I'm glad it was.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, and to I, look, I think everyone wants as good of a world for themselves as they can. And even a lot of us want as good of a world for as many people as we can. But things get ugly, and there's a lot of fighting and turmoil and all of these things.
Mhm.
And yeah, the really poignant thing about Wonder Woman, aside from the fact that, oh man, was it just so badass to see a woman just like obliterate men's perceptions of women
Mhm.
around World War II in that movie. I
Oh
forgot
yeah.
how awesome that was. But it's
Was it World War I?
no, it was World War II.
It
It,
was
it
too.
was the Nazis,
It was okay.
wasn't it?
I thought I don't. Now, oh gosh, now I'm having a double. Now I'm having a.
Our brains are working so well this week.
I
Woohoo!
know.
Was it not the Nazis?
I'm trying to think. I'm gonna double check if it was World War I or World War II. I thought it was World War II, but I could be. Let's see.
So when it comes,
No, it was World War I.
it was World War
It
One.
was World War I. So she had
Ah,
even longer, and then she
there you
had to
go.
double up and see an even
God,
worse.
then she had to see World War II happen.
I know.
And yeah, so like the one of the things that I truly believe is one of the major roles of a therapist or any kind of provider who's trying to help someone. Actually, I was going to say with their mental health, but honestly, with other things as well, because I've heard that this is really important for like cancer work as well, for example, is
Hmm.
being able to hold the hope, help someone be able to see a potential future, help be able to hold this idea of what can be beyond the suffering and the things going on, belief in change, all of this stuff. And I just really like how they hit on for her, given that she ages so slowly, that she's essentially immortal in so many ways when you compare her to humans, just
Hmm.
how complex that is to be able to do. Because similarly, as a superhero, she has to believe in something good. She's fighting for something.
Hmm.
And she leaves her home. She abandons everything she knows because she believes so much in protecting humanity from destruction and from
Right.
war and suffering. And then she finally realizes that what she had a naivete about it. And actually I feel like there's some of this in therapy work, where you have to actually find a way to accept ourselves as who we are and how complex and ugly that can be in
Right.
order to actually truly hold hope through difficult times like this. And okay, take a break for some decades,
Right.
but she eventually comes back around
Hmm.
and kicks butt again and is really a very stabilizing force when it comes to the Justice League later.
Yeah. And and the way I think about it like when, like, even if we're looking at this current situation, turn off the news.
Oh, yeah.
Just turn it off. Look at puppies, uh pull up pictures of cute animals, do something to just kind of check out, because I mean, I think that's what she had to do, because it was one of those things. I think if she kept it up, she would have gotten to this point where it was like, okay, what's the point? This is just a
Mm,
vicious cycle. It keeps happening over and over again. And she also was dealing with loss already,
that's true.
right? Like,
Yeah.
she was already dealing with loss. And
I mean,
so,
she dealt with loss before she even left the island.
right.
And then I mean, she connected with a number of people, but the one person that she was really getting close to, and she could see as someone who was okay, complex,
Hmm.
not as purely good as I assumed, but she saw him as hope for humanity up and die, makes the ultimate sacrifice. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
there's so much grief that she's going through, all these different layers of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, looking at that, it's like, okay, yeah, sometimes you absolutely, like, yes, the job to do is very important. Sometimes you do have to check out. You
Oh god,
know,
yeah.
we talk about superheroes so much and talk about how they are constantly just burning the candle at both ends and how hard it is. But sometimes you just can't. You
Yep.
just can't. And I think that was a really good example of that. It's just so happens it was like, no, she checked out for a long time, because it takes time to heal. Honestly,
Yeah.
it really, really does.
It really does. And I've heard this about like nonprofit work as well, and work to help with the environment and just all of these different things where you're fighting for a cause. I think there's there's a there's a joy and a drive and something helpful about being able to work or even volunteer, but especially if you're able to spend that time that you're being paid and you can do it for a passion and something that you really value and that you want to help move forward. There's something wonderful about that, don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
And at the same time, it can be a pressure and it can be hard to step away, take breaks. It's actually one of the things that I really try and focus on a lot when I connect with other providers or when
Hmm.
I connect or when I'm working with trainees, because when you're in graduate school or med school, they train you to burn the candle at both ends,
Yeah.
work yourself to death, and that's not going to last.
Right.
And if it does, you're not going to actually be as good of a provider as you could be. And you could actually, I mean, you need the empathy, you need the drive, you need the hope. You need to be able to, you can't be 100% all the time, but you need to be able to be there a certain extent. When you show up, you got to show up. So you're
Eh,
totally right. It's so important to be able to turn the phone off. A lot of times I'll remind people like there's a reason there are hotlines, there's a reason that there's these emergency numbers, and there's a reason that even people who work for like long, take nurses for example, even people who work long hours, there's a reason that they don't just work 24/7 all of the time. We have to have breaks,
right.
but it's so hard to turn it off too.
Hmm.
um and especially if it's something important to you, like what she did. Some would maybe argue like, "Oh man, well, World War II, that wouldn't have been a big deal if Wonder Woman had shown up." But on
Right.
the flip side, she can't do everything.
No.
And even a god, demigod, whatever her technical term would be, can't accomplish everything on their own. And she
Right.
saw that very quickly when she got to, the mankind's world.
Yeah. And the thing is, and I really think to, like you said, when you're burning the candle at both ends constantly and just work, 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 it's very easy to lose your true north. It's very easy to lose
Mm,
your passion for why you're doing something in the first place, for why you're doing it, because you're so exhausted, you're so tired. You're like, what am I doing right now? I mean, as a I think as a teacher,
I was
I
just
can,
thinking you get it as a teacher.
yeah, as a teacher, yeah, you all the time you're like, what in the hell am I doing? Like
Mm,
this is bonkers. I mean, I'm in a very, very different situation with my job, you know, being virtual, but I just remember being in the public school system, or even just hearing my wife tell stories about her day. It's like you
that's so
really
hard.
truly have to have a passion
Yeah.
to go back day after day after day, just dealing with impossible circumstances and getting over impossible odds.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
I'm so
I-
glad you brought up teachers because they do so much for, I mean, literally all of a generation going through, and I mean, of course there's homeschooling and whatnot, but I mean anyone who's teaching and showing up to raise the next generation, it's so hard.
mhm,
And yeah, the amount that teachers have to show up, so okay, like I get breaks in between clients. I mean, it's sometimes it's a minute, but
mhm.
but yeah, teachers are on a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up how teachers are definitely grouped into the superhero professions.
Well, I mean, and you do the math on it, and teachers see kids more than the parents do. There's 24 hours in a day, and we're with them for 8 of them. They're home for a few of them, then they go to bed, then they're right back with us again. Like, and
Yeah.
so we it's a constant battle, but at the same time, it's one of those things where, like, the ones that are in it, we love to do it. We
Yeah.
love those light bulb moments when the kids understand stuff, and when a kid is happy and doing well. Like, that's why we do the job. It's certainly not for the paycheck, right? It's certainly not
Hmm.
for the prestige, not, you
Yeah.
know. And so yeah, but I mean it, and I think that's what a lot of, when we look at even comic book characters, superheroes, you know, a lot of times they're saving people, and it's not one of those things where every superhero doesn't get a statue in the park like Superman, you
Yeah.
know, every
Or a museum like the Flash.
or a full blown museum, right? Every superhero doesn't get that, and honestly, a lot of them are just like, given their past and given what they're going through, they don't even care.
Yeah.
They don't even care. Their true north is saving as many people as possible. And I think that's what happened with Wonder Woman. She had to go away for a while because, I mean, the first thing you see in humanity is a world war.
Yeah.
Like, that's rough. And then, while grieving, 15 years later, you see an even worse, deadlier war.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that one, she's just like, no, just no.
Hmm. Yeah, it's she I think it's also, I don't know how old technically she is when she finally meets mankind and whatnot, but it's very interesting to see her because it's definitely this child to adult process as well. Because it's like she's in early adulthood, and she's been taught all of these things by her family. She has these certain ideas and ideals, and a lot of those are true to her, but then she leaves home and she realizes all of these things that she wasn't aware of,
Hmm.
that either her family couldn't prepare her for, or some things actively didn't prepare her for. And she has to figure out, where do I go from here given this new information? And really just having, she does, I think, a really good job of, in the moment, trying to embrace some really big shifts for her, because
Hmm.
she seemed to really go into it as humanity is good and pure entirely underneath it all,
Right.
and has to come to a more complicated conclusion about, okay, there is such good and beauty, and there's also such horror and destruction, just like nature, just like all of these things about the world and the cycle of life and all these things. She has to find the ways to live with the fact that humanity is complicated. And
And
I think she deals with it really quickly. Even if you factor in
very,
disappearing for decades, considering how long she lives and how much she had to adjust to, I feel
yeah.
like it was pretty quick.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, she rolled with the punches really fast and undid some heavily preconceived notions very quick.
Hmm.
Because I mean, when she was on the island, I mean, all she heard was mankind's bad, stay right here, we don't leave the island. And I mean, if you look it up, canon wise, I want to say Wonder Woman's over 2,000 years old.
Okay, I
She's
don't even
over,
remember.
yeah, I want to say she's over
That would make
2,000 years
sense.
old. And
Yeah,
so
given the whole Zeus thing and whatnot, that makes
right.
sense.
Like being over 2,000 years old, leaving the island and seeing World War One as soon as you leave it, she's better
Yeah.
than me. I would have made a U-turn. I would have made a U-turn. I'm like, yep, nope. They're
Men
right.
suck. Vaginas forever.
They're
Let
right.
me back in. Let me back in.
They're right. See you at dinner.
I think I sent you this when I was watching, because I was watching, and before she left the island, before she left Themyscira, I was like, man, uh, here's this like, matriarchal society, da, da. And I was looking up something. I found this BBC article. Forget who wrote it, but it was someone who was, I think, authoring a book about this. But it was essentially talking about how patriarchy came to be as prominent as it is, and of
Hmm.
course, seems like it had to do with once people started collecting wealth, and then they wanted to hold on to wealth beyond their own life, and more like, oh, this is mine versus ours, as that started to develop more and more,
Yeah.
um, then it shifted to more of a, okay, well, here's women's roles, here's men's roles, here's how we, um, but yeah, apparently there's a lot of evidence for a lot more matriarchal societies, and a lot of the matriarchal are more like balanced gender and sex wise. It's not like
Hmm.
women ruling everything, but
Right.
more like, they even said that um in some places, if you looked at the bones and stuff, you didn't even see like many height stature differences, and all of the jobs and everything were just evenly split across
Hmm.
everyone. I'm like, man, that sounds nice.
What
Let's
a time to
live in
be
a
alive.
commune.
Right.
Live in a
Right.
commune. Everyone owns everything. Let's
They
just be
might.
a super hippie.
Maybe they'll make a comeback. We'll
But
see.
I mean, like, think about all of the stuff she left, and that's true. You had a good point that, I mean, they pretty much were like, "Hey, we saw humanity, we pieced out." And still, though, I mean, she hung on to all the tales of like, "Well, we're here to like help humanity and
Right.
this, that, and the other." And um, in some ways, maybe another thing I can relate to with her, I guess, too, is like, I've always had the right to vote, and
Hmm.
um, there I had access to birth control so far, and
Yeah. Right.
and all these other things, where I think in some ways that allows, maybe you to risk and to step out, and to, she's willing to help when they aren't, but then she has to really come face to face with reality that she had never had to face before. So,
Yeah. And
oh,
and
good old patriarchy. Because she was like, why? Like, she kept going places, and they're like, oh, a woman. And
right.
she's like, hello, hi,
Yeah.
what's the big deal?
Well, and the thing that was interesting is she also saw the bigger picture before a lot of other people did. Like she did,
Mm,
because like I mean, she knew like, okay, God of War is behind is
yeah.
behind this, and
And
she
everyone's
got it
like,
wrong.
yeah,
Like
okay.
who it was, she got it wrong
Yeah.
who it was, but still that same threat remained the same. Like who it wasn't in some continuities. I know in the Justice League cartoon continuity, Um, I think it's not Ares that's her father, but it's Hades. I can't remember, but it's an interesting like continuity where it's like, oh, you find out her dad is not the best person, but in most of them, I think
Oh, I
she
don't
was
remember
just
that. I'm gonna have to find that
yeah. It
episode.
was in the Justice League cartoon. It's like it's heavily implied that I think it was Hades that's her father.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's very, very seeing her interact with humanity as someone super powerful, but also like not a child. Like a lot of the times
Yeah.
with the superheroes, it's like, okay, Superman raised in Kansas from a child.
Mm,
Batman was a kid, saw his parents murdered. Wally
mm-hmm.
West grew up for the most part completely normal,
Yeah.
had something bad happen
So
to his
Wonder
dad, but did not
Woman,
get the powers till later on.
yeah,
Whereas Wonder Woman,
Wonder Woman, you know who I relate her most to in terms of what you're talking about? Jean.
yes, yes,
The
yes,
ones
Martian
that, because
Manhunter.
she's essentially
Hmm.
an alien. I
Yes.
mean, not technically, she's
No, but
like a demigod
absolutely.
or whatever, but I mean, in
She's
terms of
not
what
from
you're
this world. So,
right,
yeah.
in terms of what you're referring to, it's literally as if she came from another planet, and absolutely as an adult. And yeah, that is such a shock, such a
Hmm.
culture shock. It's just like so, woo, yeah, just so much she'd have to learn all at once. And I mean, one of the major differences is like the Martian Manhunter Jean, like he had to leave.
Hmm.
She didn't have to leave. She chose to leave. So I
Yes.
mean, there's that difference, but there's also this suggestion where she can't just like head back whenever she wants either. So there's
Yeah.
there's still a little bit of that in comedy even though she chose to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is definitely an interesting point where for some of them it's like an adult entering and saying, "Okay, do I choose to interact and help this world that isn't my own?"
Yeah. Because you don't really hear a lot about her alter ego and what she does in
Mm,
the meantime. Like you don't hear
yeah.
that a lot about her. Whereas you see like Clark or Bruce like constantly
Mm,
you're seeing there in between. I mean, even in the movies, I feel like you don't even see her.
yeah, you get little hints here and there.
It's like, oh, she works in a museum and she's an
Yeah,
art curator and she just doesn't age. And Batman's like, well, that's interesting. Like, and
I know,
so,
right? By the way, I know we had an episode. This is totally off, not totally off topic, but off of the topics we're talking about. But I know, like recently, we talked about how Batman, Catwoman, and I love them together. But I just got to throw it out there. I am a huge Batman, Wonder Woman fan.
yeah,
Huge.
the it was really good to see in the cartoon.
I
In
loved in the
the
cartoon, and they even like. I mean, we're not talking about those movies now, but in Justice League, they kind of
they
like
flirted a
came
lot.
to
There was
yeah,
something,
they
yeah.
gave it a little
They
something something there,
definitely
and I'm
gave
like,
them chemistry.
because yeah, Bruce, she has to like come to terms with the darker side of humanity, and like yeah, her and Bruce they get each other.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
they
I
do.
I just had to jump in and say that I dig those two together.
Yeah, well, because again, it's all about having that true north. And the thing is,
Mm,
in the Justice League cartoon, Wonder Woman has a lot of anger. She has a
yeah,
lot of anger, and I think it's interesting because like when you see her interact with Bruce, a lot of the times Bruce, he's like locked in. He's like, "Look, this is why I do it." And he even says it at one point. He's like, "I'm a rich kid with parent issues."
yeah,
And like
yeah,
he even says that. Like, and I think I think she really respects his honesty while she's also still navigating like choosing not to kill and
yep,
choosing to stay with Justice League and fight with them, fight for good. Because there's a lot of times, I mean, like there's a lot of times like that episode when they thought Superman was dead. She almost killed Toyman, and
yeah.
Batman was
I mean,
like,
and in
that's
this
not what he would
movie,
want.
she's like, "Let me kill this dude." I mean, okay, granted, she thought it was Ares, but
Right.
she didn't seem too sad about it when she found out he wasn't.
Nope.
I mean, he was not a good dude, let's be real. So, and it was war. Isn't it funny? We're like, oh yeah, it's war. You know, rules are different.
Doesn't count.
It was
Doesn't
funny.
count. Right. It's like,
Morality shift
yeah.
with war and things.
Well, yeah, it's like the Batman doesn't kill people, but if someone throws a hand grenade at him and he bops it back at him, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's just physics.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Physics killed that person.
yeah. What's Neil deGrasse Tyson have to say about this? Right. But yeah, like she is very, very interesting. And honestly, I feel like I respect her more for being human and
Yeah.
taking time off. Because a lot of
Yeah.
the times, superheroes, it's like, oh, they never take time off. She took time off and she needed to.
Oh God,
And
yeah.
with very good reason. Honestly, I respect her for even coming back. If I left my island of thousands of years and immediately saw World War One, the one person I clicked with died, nope, done with them.
And he didn't die peacefully. He exploded with a bunch of
Yeah,
poisonous gas that he
yeah,
shot up in the air.
yeah.
There's
I was
like
like, yeah,
literally no body.
yeah. I would watch you. I would watch humanity implode on itself. Like if I were her, like she's way better than me. Like yeah, I'd probably stop the occasional bank robbery here and there, but like it'd be a lot to really put my foot in and really get involved again after that. And I applaud her for doing that because what ended up happening probably is as an art curator and as she just lived amongst people, she definitely, because the first thing she saw was the bad.
Yeah.
First thing she saw was not only the bad, but some of the worst.
Yeah. Well, the first she saw was Chris Pine.
Okay, well, yeah, and those
But once she
those
left
ocean blue
Themyscira.
eyes. Yeah, right. He's a gorgeous man. He is. I will say that confidently. As a confident male, he's a gorgeous man. I get that. I'd follow that guy off the island, right? But then immediately she's exposed to the worst of
Yeah.
humanity. And so she got a little bit of the good when she was just with him for that short and his squadron for that short amount of time. Then she saw the absolute worst. Then it was like, okay, I can't go back home. I'm just going to live amongst these people,
But
see how
also
they
like,
interact.
you know, another piece of this, which I mean, obviously all the violence and the destruction, everything, I think that ranks in the forefront for her. But she's also constantly being put in her place, quote unquote, which is
Hmm.
not actually her place, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she's because you were saying, you know, then she sees all the destruction. Actually, the first thing she sees is London. And the first thing she's done is forced to wear clothes that are acceptable for women to wear
Ugh.
around World War I in London.
Ugh. Yeah.
And she's only sometimes allowed in places, and then she's not supposed to talk, and then this and the and she, in some ways, I think the naivete and just like being unaware helps her because she just is kind of a bull in a china shop and it doesn't
Yeah.
phase her. It also probably helps that uh you know, she can hold around. So what are
Right.
they gonna
Very
do?
well. Very much so.
Because you know, even if they did something about it, they'd have a tough time. But I mean, so not only is there all this violence and everything, but she is not fitting in, and she is, and especially if she's not in the superhero role. I mean, that had to be hard too. I mean, she had to make so many different adjustments, and she literally grew up on an island where women did everything, were everything.
Hmm.
You couldn't underestimate women because that's all there were. And and here she is having to acclimate to a very different set of social rules as well. So like on top of all the violence and everything, she's also being forced to pigeonhole herself in terms of what she's supposed to do. They don't hit on it for her as like a superhero. Um but I mean, it's definitely interesting because, like, even dressed as a superhero, she's still a woman. So there's
Hmm.
probably still all that stuff still going on. And it would be particularly interesting for her to meet another superhero, who's a male, back in that day to see what would have happened. But
That would have been a really cool interaction, like someone like
hmm
meeting the Justice Society, like seeing
yeah.
those that squad back in the day. Like, yeah, that would have been very interesting. Or even seeing like, what's the original Flash? Jay Garrick, like
Oh
someone,
yeah, that would have been super
yeah,
cool.
like seeing him, or like,
And
I
look,
mean,
like all theoretically, all these people are wonderful people, but they also were of their time.
yeah,
I mean, let's be real. There are plenty of like older folks who sometimes approach me in a way, and I kind of go, they're doing the best they
yeah,
can in terms of just how they're approaching me about things that, as a woman, isn't my favorite, but also isn't, overtly offensive or anything. But sometimes
yeah,
people are overtly offensive, but usually not. So, I mean, like, some of that stuff would probably be there. So, she was getting hit from all angles, and then, yeah, I'm with you. Like, if I were her, I'd probably be, um, yeah, just kind of drinking the days away somewhere,
yeah,
saying, "Well,
for sure.
y'all chose this life."
I think that's definitely what she'll be doing this week, right? That's how, I mean, guess how it feels. Like, well, that's what you want. All right,
Some
I'm
things I
out.
wish I had. What is it called? Her like lasso of truth.
Oh
That'd be
gosh,
nice. If
yeah,
life had lassos of truth, I wish that I could just like go around and like know, like truly, what do we all believe? And because here's the thing too is
and
that
that's also something that she had that helped her get a taste of like humanity, like something that was like a tool like that will make you
mhm.
tell the absolute truth. Like,
Yep. We need that these days. All the misinformation, all the TikTok nonsense, and social media, and this, that, and the other. And you've got countries and corporations and all these
mhm,
different people, or just Joe Schmo, including us, like just posting whatever the heck we want out there. It's nice that things can get out there, but there aren't these restraints, and when you get exposed to things, you can automatically just take it in as truth. It'd be really nice to have a lasso of truth these days, because I mean, it wouldn't get around some of like the selective perceptions. So it would help you tease apart, okay, what are people's true motives.
right,
But so they actually there was this really interesting study that they did. God, I think it was like the 50s. So this is a while back. There was this study they did of college students at Princeton and Dartmouth.
mhm,
There was a football game, and it was a really rough game for a variety of reasons. And so these psychologists afterward were like, interesting. They were interested, like they were at both of the schools, and they're like, okay, so the Dartmouth newspapers and the Princeton newspapers were reporting what the game had been like completely differently.
mhm,
So they had people watch clips of the games, and based on which school you went to, you literally saw different numbers of penalties. And you scaled the penalties differently, purely based on which school you went to. So the
hmm,
lasso of truth would be helpful. But the problem is, if you lassoed those Dartmouth and Princeton people, it wouldn't change their perception of what had happened, right? So
that's a good
we would
point.
still have problems, even if we had the lasso of truth, because our stupid brains can get so stuck that people would be telling the truth, but be telling you completely different things about the same football game, or the
Yeah,
same presidential candidate, or the same, yeah, I don't know, whatever else she would be lassoing people about. But
yeah, that's a
yeah.
good point.
So
That's a
lasso of
good
truth
point.
helpful, but not the only solution we would need.
True. That's a really good point. I mean, I think that her story, especially in like the Snyderverse, her
Mm.
story is very interesting. I do really feel like that whole part in 84 really takes a lot away. Like, I understand that it's a story about getting over grief, um and realizing like you can't have it all. Like, I understand, but like the method that they told that story was very, very problematic.
The
But
story was very, so many things are problematic
yeah,
about that story.
yeah,
Yeah,
very,
not a
yeah,
fan.
not a fan at all. But if you if you subtract that story and
I'm down.
just right, and just put it into perspective of her, showing up to help Superman and Batman fight Doomsday, and then
Mm,
showing up to help them fight Steppenwolf, like, and just giving her all for humanity despite everything that happened to her previously.
yeah.
I mean, it really shows, like, as powerful as she is, at the end of the day, I think resiliency might still be her number one power, especially being
Mm,
someone that is immortal and still just sticking with it and
that's the
trying to
thing.
help as many as she can.
I mean, coming back around to holding the hope. Yeah, I mean, she is in the long game.
Yeah.
It's she is in the most marathon of marathons with
Hmm.
all of this, and she could easily just see us as ants
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she either squashes or she walks around and just lets us do our thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she steps up, and even in situations that are kind of complicated,
Hmm.
like bringing Superman back to life where she's not entirely on board with Bruce, but
Right.
and she deals with Batman, for God's sake. I mean, like,
Right.
he's a prickly fella, that one. Granted, he's not going to underestimate her, but
No, he
still,
doesn't.
prickly
Eh,
fella.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
but yeah, I agree with you that resilience really is a superpower for her. And um I mean, she has to deal with a lot of anger. But I think if you really believe in making the world a better place, you're going to get angry at times because it's not a
Absolutely.
simple thing to do. If it was a simple thing to do, it would be done.
Hmm.
It would be over.
Yeah.
And and the thing is too is that I think that she had to find the human in humanity even when all the terrible stuff was going on, and
Yeah.
sometimes she needed a break because she couldn't do it in that moment. And you
Hmm.
know what? If you can break someone in two, it's just a twist of your wrist, it's probably a good idea to take a break when you need one.
Absolutely, especially when you've lived majority of your life in a bubble,
Mm,
and now you're in a situation where it's like every single bit of light that I see from humanity, there is just as much darkness. Like, that's how it
mm,
is with her. It's like, okay, every single time it's like war after war after war. Every single person she saves, she still outlives them by 1,000 years.
yeah.
Like, that's the thing, like, being able to stick with it and be humanity's savior and big gun over and over and over again. That is such resiliency, and I mean, hell
And
of a
she's
role
a
model.
warrior.
Hmm.
So Superman has a similar dilemma, but
Yeah.
he's a farm boy. And
He
and that's
grew
not
up,
meant as a negative thing, to be clear. I'm just like, he's a farmer.
but he grew up here. It's all
And
he
he grew up
knows.
here, and he grew up on a farm, and he, like, grew into powers, etcetera. She was literally I mean, like, granted, in this storyline, her mom is hesitant to have her train as a warrior, but it
Hmm.
still happens at a fairly young age. I mean,
It does.
she's trained as a warrior, she lives among warriors.
Hmm.
Their whole purpose for being was to be warriors. Granted, they
Right.
secluded themselves, but they were still training as warriors. So, I mean, like, it's not that she doesn't can't stomach
Right.
the war part,
Right.
but she needed a reason to fight
Hmm.
and to keep fighting. And yeah, it's easier said than done, but
Yep.
uh, yeah, I agree with you. She has to find a way to hold on to that hope in a way that not too many superheroes have to, just because of her specific background.
Yeah, and I mean, relating it with reality, just like we do a lot of times with this podcast, we all, I think, have to find a reason to keep going and hold on to hope and be the good in the world.
Hmm. And still she persisted. Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JBS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/Bat Therapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.